Soil is a healthy, living, vibrant ecosystem in itself. It cycles nutrients, it holds water, and it sustains life. All life begins and ends with the soil.
We've promoted monoculture in a big way, and monoculture on soil is just not working.
Våra jordar ska vi ha egentligen för evigt. Då går det inte långsiktigt att gödsla våra jordar med socker.
Man kan väl säga att vi nu står inför climate change, klimatförändringar. Så att det är kanske än viktigare inför framtiden att ha en god markstruktur.
Trots att vi äter dubbelt så mycket grönsaker som vi gjorde på 1970-talet så får vi i oss mindre mineraler och viktiga spårämnen.
We're only really keeping food at a very low price, artificially low price.
By deploying very simplistic agricultural systems, we have to safeguard them, protect them with some nasty chemicals.
The world's arable land is the foundation of civilization. It gives us almost everything that we eat. But of all natural resources, it attracts the least attention, and it's being destroyed faster than it's reformed. 10 million hectares of land a year, or 30 football pitches every minute, are depleted and taken out of production.
Ja, jord är på inget sätt en slit- och slängprodukt. Så man ser en berghäll framför sig och frågar hur lång tid tar det innan den här berghällen har blivit en bördig jord. Då är det lång tid. Då ska berget vittra. Det kan handla om tusentals år innan det blir något som man kan odla i.
Ja, om man skulle dela upp den odlingsbara jorden på vår planet, då skulle man få kanske 2000 kvadratmeter per person. Och eftersom jordens befolkning ökar hela tiden och vi förstör jorden ganska fort, så är det en ekvation som inte går ihop i längden.
Soil is the most important medium of the world. It contains 80% of the biomass of the world, so it's really the living system of the world. And if we don't take care about him, he will die, and then the quality of the production decline, and then we are sick because soil are sick.
The soil is a living system, and if unstable, will throw everything else out of balance, including us human beings. We probably don't realize just how important it is, or how much of the land on our planet is arable. The entire population of the world is to be fed from an area smaller than Russia. That's all there is.
Soil is the thinnest layer on the earth in which the plants and the life can thrive. So it's a very shallow area. In some places maybe a meter depth, but in some other places it's only a few centimeter depth. So it's a very thin layer.
It kind of occupies the space between rock and life. Half of soil is broken down pieces of mineral, and half of it is decomposing organic matter that was living. And so it's kind of that interface.
När vi tittar på jorden så kan vi ju tro att den är mer eller mindre steril, för att det mesta som finns där ser vi ju inte. Men så är det ju verkligen inte. Under varje kvadratmeter finns det mer bakterier än det finns människor på jorden till exempel. Och allting som hamnar på jorden, löv men även gifter och kemikalier som inte ska vara där, tas ju om hand av de organismer som finns i jorden.
Soil, once thought by many to be dead, cold and black. But a large portion of all living creatures are believed to inhabit this microcosm. The length of fungi mycelia is virtually endless, an ecosystem that breaks down organic matter, weathers minerals, purifies water, and services the entire biosphere.
De som börjar bearbetningen av det här materialet, det är bakterier. Miljontals med bakterier som växer till och förökar sig när de får mycket mat. Och svampar som med sina hyfer går igenom alla det här organiska materialet och bryter sönder det. Och det kan då rötterna ta upp i ett perfekt skick för dem att kunna bara liksom suga in med markvätskan.
You know, it's all about life and death, because you need that cycle. And that's what the soil food web is, simply put. It's simply about life and death and how in a natural ecosystem, the biology feeds the plant feeds the biology.
The plants and the soil need one another. They've developed and perfected a mutual balance during the course of evolution that have become a self-sufficient entity.
If you look at how a healthy soil ecosystem functions, it's all about photosynthesis. How much sunlight can I capture with living plants? Those living plants then, through photosynthesis, pump carbon into the soil. And as they do that, that carbon then in the soil feeds all that soil life and allows that soil to produce much, much more.
Photosynthesis is a miracle of nature. It extracts carbon and, in conjunction with the degradation of organic matter, creates humus, the soil layer that is a prerequisite for all food production. It's in the humus that we find most of the nutrients, but it's also the humus that disappears in modern farming. Diversity and the number of organisms decrease, and the self-sufficient entity falls apart.
It's a bizarre human trait that we destroy soils. When we first started agriculture, we chose to domesticate annual crop species. And by doing that, it requires breaking open the soil every year and sowing our crop, kind of a horizontal clear cut of the vegetation. And we became dependent on those crops. We have to eat annual crops because those are the cereals that make up very much of our food, 70% of our calories. And about 70 to 80% of cropland is planted with annual cereals, oilseed crops, or fiber crops. So as a species, we've backed ourselves into this cul-de-sac. And there's really no way out right now if we depend so overwhelmingly on a food-producing ecosystem that includes dramatic soil disturbance on a regular basis.
The production of annual crop species consumes the soil by tilling it. Subsurface life is brought up, and life on the surface is moved down. This sparks off processes that release nutrition, but also carbon dioxide. Tillage, farming with the help of plows, is part of the success story of civilization, but it's also part of the soil depletion.
All form av jordbearbetning förstör den naturliga strukturen i marken och slår fullständigt sönder mikrolivets hus där de lever. Det är som tsunami och jordbävning och orkan på samma gång, och det sker kanske både 1 och 2 gånger samma år.
You know, there's natural degradation that can happen. You can have a landslide off of a mountainside, and that destroys the soil, and you have to start over. But in agriculture, We're doing that landslide on about 12% of the Earth's surface area every year. And nothing like that has occurred in geologic history as far as I know.
It feels awkward to regard the plow and tillage as threats, since they traditionally symbolize fertility and good times. But contemporary food production has become so industrialized that it causes damage to soil layers deeper down as well.
Vad gäller markpackning så är det också ett ökande problem därför att gårdarna blir mer och mer specialiserade, och när man blir specialiserad så vill man vara så rationell som möjligt, och då blir maskinerna större och tyngre. Och vi får längre odlingssäsonger, så vi kör på marken när den är våt, och då får vi markpackning. Men det hänger också ihop med att mark som bearbetas har inte den bärighet som obearbetad mark har.
This impacts the layers below plowing depth, which become almost like cement. It creates a kind of lid that won't let through any rainfall, and that results in flooding. It also prevents water from being filtered and groundwater reserves from being replenished. Industrial, monocultural food production creates problems.
We've promoted monoculture in a big way, and monoculture on soil is just not working. In Europe, you have soils that have, for the last 30 years, never seen another crop than wheat or maize. And when you look at this soil, it's just horrible what we find. You know, there's no earthworms, no life, hardly any biological activity within the soil, big erosion problems. And you have a farmer that's telling you that he's, every year he's using more fertilizer, and the yields are not any better.
Our food supply chain rests on streamlined farming. One of the conditions for this is monocultivation, the same annual crops over large areas. There's no variation, and the natural interaction between plants and soil has been done away with. The soil decays. 1/3 of all soil in Europe is said to be under stress. In some parts of the USA, California among others, plantations and groundwater systems are collapsing. The cycle has been thrown off balance. This is the land of huge cultivated areas. Taken globally, 1/3 of all wheat is grown on the American prairie. But there are farmers who work differently, who recognize the threats and who are questioning industrial farming.
Modern agriculture, to me, unfortunately, has become one that's driven by money. I often look at most producers merely as puppets. You know, they're doing what they're told to do. Plant this crop, use this fertilizer, use this chemical, grow this monoculture. To me, that's not what agriculture should be. Agriculture should be about producing healthy food in a way that actually regenerates the soil. But it's just not that way today. Just look at this soil, how capped it is. Now, I'm a big guy, but look at how hard that is. But look at the crust on the soil, look at the platiness. And if you smell that, you can smell the bacteria, how rancid it is. Now this operation, same family for 50 years, But the only true crops they have grown is flax and spring wheat, monocultures, very little diversity. The other thing you notice, obviously there was no earthworms, there was no life, you see no insects out there. This crop isn't getting very many nutrients at all from this soil. This soil is more or less just a medium to hold the plant upright. This operation, they farm approximately 40,000 cropland acres. High use of synthetics, herbicides, pesticides, fungicides. Look at the root mass. The roots are moving horizontally. They're not moving vertically. Look at the bulk density. You can just see the bulk density of this soil, how hard it is. That's from synthetic fertilizers.
En av de absolut viktigaste djuren i matjorden är dagmaskarna. Det finns massor med olika arter, en del är väldigt små, en del är stora. Men de gör samma sak. De omvandlar det här organiska materialet. De gräver gångar i jorden. I de här gångarna så kan växtrötterna ta sig fram och luft kan komma in. Regn kan infiltrera. Det blir en porös, fin väv av små hålrum i hela markprofilen som gör att vattnet lätt kan rinna ner i jorden, kan komma ner till grundvattnet, bli fint renat och inte rinner av på ytan och därmed dra med sig en massa matjord och medverkar till erosion.
Monoculture affects all soil organisms, especially earthworms, who are immensely important to the fertility and structure of the soil and the humus. They transport minerals and nutrients from deep down up to the surface. In healthy soil, this means tons of earthworms and countless miles of their tunnels. Unfortunately, they're in decline. Without the earthworm, the humus and the ecosystem lose their most brilliant engineer.
Earthworms do not like synthetic fertilizers. They do not like pesticides. They do not like fungicides. They do not like herbicides. They do not like monocultures. They do not like bare soil. They need crop residue. They need a healthy home. They need soil aggregation.
Ett jordbruk som inte har vanlig, alltså kogödsel, utan bara konstgödsel, där lider ju helt enkelt dagmaskarna av matbrist. De har ingenting att äta, utan de behöver äta organiskt material. Finns det inte det så dör de eller flyttar någon annanstans.
But how does an earthworm move across these vast fields when the surface of the soil is swept clean of all plant debris and organic matter? Ordinary manure is no longer a given. The only thing that's suggestive of the days of self-sufficient farming, when nutrients were circulated, are the dung flies enjoying what little cow dung is still around. The lack of organic matter not only affects earthworms and other soil-living creatures, but also the all-important exchange of nutrients between plants and fungi.
In the biodiversity of the soils, all the elements are very important. You have a lot of fungus, like we call mycorrhizas, which are very, very important because they are the elements that make the link between all the nutriments and all the elements you have in the soil and with the roots of the vineyard. So if you don't have this huge family of fungus, you don't have any communication between the soil and the plant. So they really allow communication.
Svamparna har sitt mycel och kan växa ut i marken och fånga upp näringsämnen som kväve och fosfor. Och växterna har sin fotosyntes, solljuset och luftens koldioxid, och bildar kolhydrater. Men har svårt att komma åt näringsämnen i marken. Så därför så byter de här helt enkelt med varandra.
90% of all plants interact with fungi to guarantee the absorption of vital minerals and other nutrients like nitrogen and phosphorus, a crucial ecosystem service that is under threat from chemical farming.
The problem with mycorrhiza is that, like any fungi, they are sensitive to fungicides. And in agriculture, we use a lot of fungicide, especially when we are in monoculture. And once the plant loses this symbiotic association with the mycorrhiza, it loses also its ability to take up phosphorus in the soil.
Om mykorrhizasvamparna försvinner ur en jord så tar det väldigt lång tid för den att kunna komma tillbaka. Det sker en återkolonisering från åkerkanterna. Men har man väldigt stora fält också så blir det liksom en ännu långsammare process.
If this natural exchange is lost, we risk becoming dependent on chemical fertilizers, particularly phosphorus, which is only mined in a few places in the world.
Det finns ett peak fosfor och när det inträffar, det vet vi inte riktigt, men när fosforn tar slut i gruvorna då måste samhället lösa kretsloppet. Annars så kommer skördarna att minska drastiskt. Det är ett sådant viktigt ämne.
We compensate for the lack of natural nutrients with chemistry. Elements like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are manufactured using energy-intensive methods. Fertility has diminished, but crops still grow. Are we covering up the depletion of our soil with chemical fertilizers?
Genom konstgödning så kan vi få ett lantbruk där vi inte behöver ha djur. Genom konstgödning så kan vi få upp höga skördar även på jordar som inte egentligen har kapacitet att leverera de här skördarna.
Jag brukar jämföra konstgödning som med socker. Det är väldigt mycket energi, väldigt lättillgängligt, men den finns där en väldigt kort stund. Det går liksom inte att springa ett maratonlopp på bara sockerlösning. Och våra jordar ska vi ha egentligen för evigt så länge mänskligheten finns. Och då går det inte långsiktigt att gödsla våra jordar med socker.
And right now, we will put on, 100 kilos of nitrogen, and between 40 and 60 of those kilos go somewhere else in the environment. They're not taken up by the crop.
Monoculture and chemical fertilizers constitute a threat. The soil becomes passive, and the nutrients end up in oceans, lakes, and other waterways. Dangerous compounds from phosphorus-based fertilizers become part of the food we eat.
Ett problem med fosforgödslingen är också att den innehåller ofta kadmium, den här fosformalmen. Om vi nu ska ta bort den ur fosforgödslingen så kommer det vara kostsamt, och struntar vi i det så kommer vi få massa kadmium i maten i framtiden. Så att det är många problem som hopar sig, kan man säga, med det här moderna jordbruket.
Much of what we end up using agrochemicals for, insecticides, fungicides, things like this, is to compensate for the lack of diversity. Diversity in the natural system is what prevents diseases from taking down all of the plants there. It's what prevents one insect from just exploding, because there's habitats for predators living in other plants. And so by deploying very simplistic agricultural systems, we have to safeguard them, protect them with some nasty chemicals.
In production agriculture today, producers are focused on how do I kill that pest, kill that pest. For every insect species that's a pest, there's 1,700 that are beneficial. So here we are in production agriculture trying to kill that one pest when we should be providing a home for the 1,700 that'd eat that pest. Makes no sense. It makes no sense what we're doing in agriculture today.
What happened? You find everything in diversity. But in just over half a century, agriculture has become industrialized and reliant on finite resources. The soil has become a cheap means of production. For farmers and wine producers, dead soil is a reality.
When I started my winery 10 years ago, I had been rented to a farmer who was not working naturally at all. And I realized the soils that I started to work on were almost dead. There was no energy, they were very superficial, and there was no life, no biodiversity, nothing was going on.
There's maybe 10% of the soils that are well looked after, and then the majority of the soils we see anyway when we do soil studies are soils that are not working well. And when you use pesticides, then it's more difficult for the plant to get a good, healthy nutrition because the microbial community is completely disorganized, and then we get into a vicious cycle.
Grapes and wine get their flavor and color from minerals. If the soil is depleted, the wine too will be depleted. Do we know what effect all these chemical compounds are having on the topsoil as an organism? Life underground is an unexplored world with unknown species, interaction, and genetic secrets.
My understanding is that fungicides, herbicides will alter the microbial community in ways that, that we don't understand. And the microbial universe is so complicated. It's hard to wrap your head around what the implications are when that community shifts because of an agrochemical.
Man kan inte lita på halveringstid när det gäller kemiska bekämpningsmedel. Där har i flera studier visat sig att de nedbrytningsprodukter som bildas när en kemikalie bryts ner är giftigare än ursprungskemikalien. Så vi vet väldigt lite om olika kemikaliers påverkan både på miljön och på vår egen hälsa.
We don't know everything, so we can't be sure how various substances interact with one another and with everything else in nature. But instant profits erase our connections with the ecosystems, and our presence on the land is increasingly rare.
In French, we call the farmer paysan. That means the man who take care about the pays land. You know, where there is a relation between the country and the farmer. But when you have no more farmer, land die. You must understand that, and people don't take care. They're very happy because there's no more farmers. They're very happy in Europe, in Brussels. They're very happy. Actually, we have no more farmers. That's a good thing. We have just industry, and we eat junk food. And people are very happy, and they believe that that's a good way. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, we have destroyed farmer, we have destroyed industry, we have destroyed all the what makes a civilization. We are just in barbaric time.
Is it our way of life that has silenced the land? By wanting the cheapest possible products, fruit and vegetables all year round, are we threatening the land, and thereby the prospects of future farming? Have we been promoting large-scale farming and land consumption instead of land management?
The farming that we are having today, especially in orange plantations, is moving to big farms, large properties that are managed by big companies. They design the product for north of Europe. This is making that we are changing the fertilization, we are changing the system of production, and this is resulting in farms that are not sustainable. We are using a lot of chemicals, not only chemical fertilizers, also pesticides and herbicides. The result right now is that we have more erosion, less healthy soil. It's like a rock. It's very dense, then the roots have difficulties to grow. They are like dust when you remove it, because there are no organic matter, no porosity, no life inside. It's a dead soil. This example of a soil that is very black, which means that there are a lot of organic matter, good aggregates, a lot of life inside. But when we have chemical farming, where we move to this kind of soil that is very yellow or red, but not dark. There is no organic matter in this soil. And this is the beginning of a process of reduction on the fertility of the soil, and the life of the soil, and this is desertification. What you can see here is the effect of the herbicides. They use glyphosate to kill all the weeds, and they don't allow to grow more weeds in the farm. And here is where is the place where they irrigate the soil, just with not only water, also nitrogen, potassium, all the basic nutrients. And this is making a dead system, a dead soil system. They also kill any possible pest, like the snails. And finally, what we found is like a desert. The irrigation system is automatic, it's managed by a computer, and you can even manage from, if you want, from United States here. In a couple of decades, if we don't protect the soil and we don't restore and rehabilitate the soil, we will lose all the soil. And day after day, because we lose the soil, we are more dependent on chemical farming. We are depending that the farmers will put more nitrogen, more potassium. When the production of oranges were in the hands of traditional farmers, the farmers take care of the soil, because they already know that from the soil is the source of nutrients and the quality of the oranges. But now that the business is in the hands of businessmen, which they know nothing about the soil, they manage the soil as a substrate, only the place where to put the roots. I'm sad, because this is not sustainable. Cannot last for 10,000 years like did the traditional agriculture. Because depending on oil, it's depending on products, on resources that will end.
On these large-scale orange plantations, the topsoil isn't seen as a living ecosystem, but as a cheap means of production. This will come back to bite them. In 20 years' time, the thin soil cover could be gone. But soil is disappearing in countries further north, too. Rich and black, the bare soil is exposed to the elements. Wherever you look, the expenditure exceeds the income. We're in the process of depleting our soil account of all capital.
Man kan väl säga att vi nu står inför climate change, klimatförändringar. Enligt alla prognoser kommer det innebära mera extrema vädersituationer, så att det är kanske än viktigare inför framtiden att ha en god markstruktur. En mycket stor del av de jordar som vi har på jordklotet är helt klart erosionsutsatta. Det kan vara vattenerosion och det kan vara vinderosion. Så erosion är ett identifierat mycket stort hot mot våra jordar.
Erosion är absolut någonting som ökar. Och vad är det som eroderar? Jo, men det är ju de finaste jordpartiklarna, och det är där näringsämnena är.
Humus and nutrients disappear in the rain and the wind. What has taken thousands of years to create is eroded away in the blink of an eye. What remains is soil that has lost its self-sufficiency, its ability to produce, its very life. And that will hurt us.
Om man odlar en gröda så kan den grödan aldrig innehålla mer näring än vad jorden innehåller. Växten har förmåga att binda kol via koldioxid, fotosyntesen. Den kan inte bilda någonting annat. Det kommer från jorden. Och det betyder att har vi en jord som är utarmad på näringsämnen så får vi en gröda som är utarmad på näringsämnen.
We're not getting the micronutrient content that requires us to stay well. And the consequences are that you're seeing more and more chronic disease conditions being presented earlier and earlier and earlier over a generational change. We're force-feeding vast swathes of land, mainly with NPK fertilizers, in a manner that creates rapid growth but doesn't necessarily allow the plant itself to be, as I say, micronutrient dense. So you have a massive piece of broccoli or a carrot or a potato, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the nutrient content is as dense as it would be in the past.
Man kan säga så här att skörden av kalcium har inte ökat, skörden av zink har inte ökat, men skörden av kolhydrater har ökat. Vi har fått upp våra skördenivåer enormt mycket. Trots att vi äter dubbelt så mycket grönsaker och frukt idag som vi gjorde på 1970-talet så får vi i oss mindre mineraler och viktiga spårämnen.
Selectively bred, fast-growing crops with shallow roots and poorer nutritional value. If, moreover, the soil is lifeless and incapable of delivering minerals and trace elements, does it mean that contemporary food production is failing to carry out its most important task, delivering healthy and diverse food?
Vi har tappat både mångfalden i jordbruket och mångfalden i våra livsmedel genom att vi gick över till de moderna vetesorterna. Och avkastningen vad gäller mineraler har också minskat i de här sorterna. Så vi får mindre mängd av mikronäringsämnen ifrån de moderna sorterna än vad som fanns i de gamla sorterna.
Växtförädlingen har varit ensidigt inriktad på höga skördar. För 50 år sedan så hade vi 10 ton halm och 4 ton kärna. Idag har vi 10 ton kärna och 4 ton halm. Men vi behöver också äta dubbelt så mycket mjöl för att få i oss samma mängd näringsämnen.
More carbohydrates and fewer micronutrients. The vitamins and minerals that govern all the functions of our cells and which in small quantities are essential to us. More sugar, less nourishment. Is it possible we're eating more because our bodies suffer from deficiencies?
Are we eating more as a result of less nutrient content? Yeah, I think we are. I think that, again, the body strives towards wanting something nourishing, something that it requires. And that is not sated. So if, in other words, you can be overfed but malnourished, and that's one of the biggest problems that we've got at the moment in terms, again, of health-related problems within our Western societies.
Det är maten som har den största betydelsen om vi ser till livsstilsfaktorer för de kroniska sjukdomar vi ser idag. Och det är mikronäringsbristen som vi behöver fokusera på. Ja, i och med att mikronäringsämnena är del av så många funktioner i cellerna så är det svårt att avläsa vad bristen resulterar i. Det kan ju bli vilken sjukdom som helst egentligen.
We compensate for cereals and rice with low nutritional value. When they're refined and polished, they lose even more of their minerals and micronutrients. So we add stuff like iron, zinc, and copper in quantities that might not be justified physiologically.
Nästan all industritillverkad barnmat som används för gröt och vällingar berikas med järn. Det järnet som vi berikar med idag, det tar vi upp omkring 2% av. Resten kommer ut i tjocktarmen. Och järnet förändrar tarmfloran. Idag kopplar vi många sjukdomar som vi ser i västvärlden till förändrad tarmflora. Som allergier, glutenintolerans och typ 1-diabetes hos barn.
Minor changes and deficiencies create imbalances that result in so-called hidden hunger and chronic conditions. Could the reduced nutritional value in our food be a fundamental cause? Are we suffering from deficiency diseases? How did it come to this? Shouldn't our food contain everything we need?
The tragedy is that actually the food manufacturing fraternity could create micronutrient foods for the populace. It's just that, again, it's an aspect of cheapness, and it's not been a priority for them to create that type of food. Mass farming doesn't help the ecology in any sense whatsoever. We're not helping the environment. We're only really keeping food at a very, very low price, artificially low price.
Where has this cheap food led us? You know, the United States spends more on healthcare than any other developed country in the world. Yet, last time I checked, we were the 42nd healthiest country in the world. We're first in ADD, ADHD, cancers, Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, osteoporosis, and the list goes on and on.
Jag tror att ett problem med livsmedelsproduktionen idag är att man likställer jordbruk med vilket företag som helst eller livsmedelsprodukter med vilken vara som helst. Det här har fått till följd att man hanterar djur som djurenheter. Att man har tappat hela känslan av varför vi bedriver jordbruk överhuvudtaget. Allt har rationaliserats till att bara handla om pengar. Då försvinner ju allting som har att göra med omtanke, omvårdnad, respekt, ödmjukhet.
Personligen så tror jag att motorn bakom den oönskade utvecklingen när det gäller förvaltningen av jordbruksmark är kravet på ekonomisk tillväxt. Att producera mer och mer till en lägre kostnad. På något sätt så förs den här ekonomiska tillväxten fram som något sorts altare. Har vi ingen ekonomisk tillväxt så kommer samhället bryta ihop. Stämmer det?
With this production-intensive market driven by economic growth, our society is rapidly becoming urbanized, and that uses up land. Fertile living topsoil is trapped beneath shopping centers, concrete, infrastructure, and soil-sealed surfaces. This vital resource is tarred over.
Jag tycker att vår jord skyddas alldeles för lite. Vi har tagit det för självklart med mat på bordet, men tyvärr så bygger det på väldigt mycket import utav mat. Och vi har alldeles för lättvindigt att bygga på den bästa åkermarken, asfaltera den, bygga vägar, industriområden och så vidare, som lika gärna hade kunnat ligga inne i skogen eller på mark som inte är så bra att odla på. För har vi en gång asfalterat så är den marken förbrukad. Då är den borttagen ur produktion.
Ett organ under FN har gjort den bedömningen att vi kommer att öka vår livsmedelskonsumtion med ungefär 70% om 35 år. Det är alltså en fruktansvärt stor förändring. Samtidigt så har vi klimatförändringar som gör att stora arealer kanske av Mellaneuropa kanske inte blir lika produktiva i framtiden. Då kommer ju kraven flyttas upp till mer nordliga latityder. Vi måste vara beredda på det här.
The climate could quickly change our way of life. So we need the arable land to store the carbon that's creating the changes to the world's weather systems. Topsoils have a function in climate regulation that we could utilize, and maybe at the same time get ourselves more crops.
What happens is all life, soil life, is dependent on carbon because that's what it consumes to live. So the more carbon we can cycle through living plants, pump into the soil, the more life we're going to have, the more we're going to be able to grow, the more carbon we're going to pull out of the atmosphere. So it's a cycle. It's a living cycle.
Det finns forskare som har kommit fram till att om vi kan höja mullhalten i världens jordar med till exempel 2%, så skulle vi kunna plocka ut alla växthusgaser ur atmosfären. Så stor påverkan har det som växer på vårt klimat. Och på så vis så kan man säga att en bördigare jord för också med sig att vi får ett bättre klimat. Att vi skulle helt enkelt kunna fixa vår tids största utmaning, den globala uppvärmningen, genom att odla mer på fälterna.
So, with nature as our model, we grow more and reduce climate change. A shift towards protective crops, low tillage cultivation, more diversity and quality instead of quantity. Annual monoculture and chemical dependency will hopefully soon be a thing of the past. There are opportunities for regeneration and climate-smart cultivation.
The last time this field was tilled was May of 1983. I wanted to bring you to this one because it really shows the next level we can take soils. And what we've done is actually planted our garden into it this year. There's rows of sweet corn and beans and peas, and you see some dandelions, but that doesn't bother us at all. Notice the appearance of this soil, how dark it is? That's carbon. And the carbon is what feeds the biology that supply the nutrients for the plants. So we haven't used any fertilizers on our operation since 2008. And everything we produce comes about naturally via biology. Healthy food as it should be. If you don't have biology, you're not going to cycle nutrients. If you don't cycle nutrients, you're not going to have nutrient-dense food. you're not going to have a healthy society.
We need to figure out how to replace the inputs that we put into agriculture right now, the chemicals, the energy, with ecological processes. And we're at a point right now where, with a greater understanding of the soil, how nitrogen's transformed and how it moves, how organic matter forms, we can make a much more sustainable agriculture.
Sustainable agriculture is possible. It's a necessity. One solution can be found in perennial crops, which reduce topsoil use and are kinder to the land. Basic perennial foodstuffs are part of our future.
Well, this is intermediate wheatgrass, which produces the grain kernza. And it is a relative of wheat. It's kind of a cousin of wheat. And it looks like wheat, but it has a very important difference. Wheat is an annual that you need to replant every year and has relatively shallow roots. Kernza has very deep roots and is a perennial. So it regrows year after year after year, protects the soil, builds soil organic matter, takes up nutrients very efficiently, and provides a lot of carbon or soil organic matter for organisms in the soil to eat. By moving the ecosystem, the agroecosystem, into a perennial state, we think we will not only conserve the soil resource, but make agriculture very, very sustainable.
One condition for sustainable food production is biological diversity, right now and in the future. Could species-rich ecosystems be the life insurance of humanity?
I alla ekosystem, även i matjordens ekosystem, så finns det under varje given tid mer och fler arter än vad som behöver finnas där, om vi pratar om friska jordar. Och det är för att det hela tiden ska finnas en buffertkapacitet om det händer någonting, yttre omständigheter, till exempel klimatförändringar.
Den biologiska mångfalden är ju oerhört viktig. Jag skulle vilja påstå att det är liksom en försäkring för framtiden. Har vi en hög biologisk mångfald, då vet vi att det finns i framtiden, om någonting förändras, och någonting kommer att förändras, så finns det alltid några grupper av organismer som är beredda att ta över och bära vidare så att systemet fungerar.
Om inte den här reservkapaciteten finns, den här buffertkapaciteten, då kan det här systemet kollapsa. Och för vår del så skulle ett kollapsat matjordsekosystem innebära att vi inte längre kan odla i den.
Not being able to grow things. What a horrible thought. And every day, we're cutting more of our lifelines. But traditional, locally sourced food is an option. Small-scale production and high nutritional value instead of the cheapest possible. Support to farmers and growers that manage their land instead of wasteful large-scale production. Our choices at the supermarket are crucial for the arable land and for our chances of growing anything at all in the future.
I'm hopeful because the solutions are here. We have the models, we have everything to make it work. I'm worried because I see the lobbies and the politics that are not taking the right decision.
We are actually in an age where there's a huge toxic load, which we also have to physiologically deal with. We also have to deal with colourings, flavourings, preservatives. These sorts of things have never been known to us before from an evolutionary perspective. And this is a time for a wake-up call. It really does need for those that make the policies to understand that the food that we eat is significant as far as our general health and well-being is concerned.
The worst case scenario for soil would be that producers and consumers don't realize that that's where the nutrients come from that sustain life. All life. All life begins and ends with the soil.
This is about the immediate future, possibly just one generation away, when we'll have used up the very thin layer of topsoil that we have at our disposal. We have to do away with the notion that the soil, the ecosystem, and nature are there to be exploited rather than interacted with, if we're to have any kind of future at all. Without life, no soil. And with no soil, no life.
People don't speak about nature, they speak about our environment. It's not our environment. That doesn't mean you have humanity and the nature around. That's stupid. You know, we beyond to the nature. So that's it. If we destroy nature, we destroy us. I mean, it's ridiculous to say that humanity and the nature. No, all are together. So actually, we are killing humanity because we kill the nature. People must understand that.
Stay.